Hi, everybody. Steve Falcon Napier. Welcome to the Circle of Brilliance. Today, we're going to start a new subject, and that subject has to do with personality typing systems based on the Greek alphabet. One of the things that I've noticed is that this is becoming more and more, what I want to say, um, featured in different social media posts and that sort of thing. So lots and lots of conversation about alphas and gammas and betas and deltas and sigmas and all this sort of stuff. So I thought it might be interesting thing for us to look at, not because I think the typing system is all that proven or whatever legitimate, but I wanted to remind everyone that that's never been a requirement for something to be evaluated from a circle of brilliance perspective. It just needs to be some kind of a model that has enough, what am I say, validity to it, surface validity. On the surface, it seems like it's right. And then we take a look at it. In our way of looking at this human typological analysis sort of pursuit, we don't think everything has to have passed academic and scientific muster. Personality typing systems have come from countless sources with all kinds of different sorts of backgrounds for thousands of years. And so I'm not here to say that one is right, wrong, good, bad. I'm just here to say it's interesting, and let's see if it can lay atop the change grid. So I'm going to slide a couple of graphics into the screen so you can see this together. Used to be they only talked about this typology or typing system and how it applies to males, because apparently male behavior is far more hierarchical than female behavior happens to be. But I said, nope, it's got to have its parallel for women just as much as it may have for men. I'll be interested to see how they might be different, but certainly we've all observed female behavior enough over our lifetimes to realize that they have their own little pecking order, just like men have a tendency to do. So, any early thoughts to throw out there before we jump into this? Have you guys heard about this? What do you think about it?
I
Anything?
never heard of it. Is this like the full alphabet?
Nope, it's not the full alphabet. Usually they only talk about 5 or 6 different types in it. I found this one to be the one we'd look at only because it did have both male and female personalities that are kind of, we can kind of look at. So, it's been a long time. And you might often have heard the phrase the alpha male in the pack, or
Yes.
whatever it happens to be. So that's what they're really talking about. So,
Okay. Because I'm a member of like the fraternity in the Jesuit society. They have Alpha Sigma Nu. And I
oh,
always
yeah.
wondered like what those things were
Yeah,
really.
no,
Like,
that's just Greek life. And so inside of any kind of a collegiate setting, or maybe outside of college, there's other kinds of fraternal and organizations and sororities that may very well identify with 2 or 3 letters from the Greek alphabet. I don't know the history of how that came to be, and I don't really know that there's any kind of personality distinctions we could draw from fraternities and sororities labeling themselves. But that's basically, you'll hear that described as Greek life on campus.
right, right. Because that's the Jesuits honor society. So you have to get nominated by the university for it, and that
Yeah.
you uh,
Yeah. Yeah.
supposed to uphold uh, with principle, like whole care, whole person, all those things.
Yeah. Yep. 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 Brian, just so you know, your signal is coming and going a little bit. So but I got the gist of all that. So yeah, and it's also, I think, even if you look at something like Harry Potter, having these different, what did they call them? Houses that you could be sorted into. It's kind of its own sort of fraternal kind of an organization, because each fraternity would describe itself in what is important to it, what its values are, what it gets involved in. So some of the fraternities are very service oriented. Some of them are purely social. Some are very academically oriented, so they're very more viewed as being more positive, a feather in your cap. But there's also always fraternities and sororities that the ne'er-do-wells can find each other in and do that. So just like in Harry Potter, there's Slytherin out there in the world of fraternities and sororities. I'm sure there are those that are far more interested in partying than they are in whatever kind of contribution they're making. But and you can look at their surface descriptions and look at their deeper behavior to see how congruent they are.
Mhm.
Thoughts about that, David? I see you're unmuted. Welcome.
Thank you. Good to see everybody, hear everybody.
Yep, yep.
Brian, good to hear you.
Likewise.
Yeah,
Shags.
Hello.
he's there, and Edie's back there. Linda's on the call. So
Hey, Linda. It's a beautiful day in Michigan.
Excellent. It's a beautiful day here too. So that's good.
yeah, we're back down into the 80s because it's
Wow. Well, that's perfect weather.
it is. It's too soon to be in the hundreds. So, but our time is coming. So, anywho, let me just briefly introduce you guys to this kind of concept, and then let me open up my chat window just one second. Oh, here we are. Delta.
I found the origin.
Shags, you were so funny. So,
Those are the fun ones.
did you text that to everybody? Yeah, you did.
That's there. And
Delta.
then there's the Jewish one. I'll put that in.
What's the Jewish one? Are you tapping it over? I'd be
Delta
curious to see
Indigo.
that. Yeah, there you go. Herbie latest.
Oh, wow.
Oh man.
That's terrible.
I know it is.
Shags could have been certainly a comedy writer, if not a comedy person.
Shags, I know what a shiksa is.
I actually had a dream about being a comedy writer last night.
Did you?
I did.
Is there a punchline to that, or is that the truth?
No, it's the absolute truth.
Okay. See.
But for some reason, I was wanted by the police. It was a weird dream.
I still feel like there's
They were searching the theater for me.
Oh man. All right. Okay.
I need a dream therapist for sure.
Yeah. There you go. All right. So anyway, let's talk about these personality typing systems. And if you go to YouTube and look at any of these, you'll find videos galore that are trying to describe them and distinguish them from the others. But here is the bottom line in it. So let's take a look at the male personalities first. At the top of the hierarchy is an alpha. And the alpha, you guys know the alpha males, and I'm going to ask you where they live on the change grid and what roles they tend to take on in life. So now I will tell you that even though they're going to use some different words for the gals, it still seems like it parallels the male one as well. But so we'll look at both, but let's start by looking at the guy's version of this. And I'm going to slide a change grid into place, but by now all of you on this call understand the change grid. So where do you think alphas live? Alphas are dominating. They are very charismatic. However, they're charismatic as a tool. They don't really care all that much about other people. They care about their agenda and getting there. That being said, alphas tend to require a lot of recognition, a lot of validation. Alphas want you to, well, to worship them. They want you to put them up on a pedestal and all that kind of thing. So while they may be very dominating, while they may be a born leader, this is being very positive, and alphas also are very insecure in their way of overcoming things, or their way of running things is by intimidation, manipulation, force of character, that sort of thing as well. So while there is this positive aspect, there's also a rather negative aspect. And so, yeah, so if I open up a change grid, where do you think this one's going to plot?
I think driven expressive.
An expressive driver. Oh, driven expressive. That's interesting. Okay. Let me go ahead and open up my little critical PDFs file here. And let's just open up a change grid. Here we are.
Yeah, that's where that charismatic is, I think.
Yeah, charismatic is definitely lives between the expressive quadrant and the driven quadrant. Just one second. I can't talk and do things at the same time. Oh, come on, open up. Here we go. Sliding it in. Hey, Tim, welcome. All right, so what we're thinking is this alpha personality is dominating, charismatic. We know they're born leaders, so they are already feeling kind of outgrid. That driver energy is probably going to be very well pronounced. Now, the moment you add that word charismatic, charismatic does move it up to more of an expressive driver kind of quality. But we also can look at what happens to an alpha when they are in a situation where they don't feel as though they have the ability. I think to David's point, they might present themselves as more as a driven expressive. So, and this is where that whole charm, that's where all that comes along, but it's the motivation behind it that's going on there. So yeah, alphas want to drive things through. They want to accomplish things. They want to be recognized for those accomplishments. They want to, be put up on that pedestal. They do actually accomplish things in their life, but they're out there. Now, where might we encounter alpha males when it comes to the kind of work that we do on the human development side of things?
CEOs, C-suite.
C-suite, CEOs, business owners, that this is that kind of personality that's going to come into
Salespeople.
salespeople, some, yep, absolutely. Now, what do you would say is the downfall of the alpha personality?
They don't listen.
They don't listen. They're not particularly coachable. Why would they not listen? Why would they not be coachable?
Because their belief in the significance of the challenge is driving them internally.
And so, go ahead.
See, I would add to that that they're probably thinking more that their skill set is higher.
Yeah.
Right. And there's less focus on people and more on tasks.
Right, exactly right. And so they really are outgrid, and some of them are going to be in the outgrid danger zone. These are the ones that become very narcissistic. So you'll find that while not all alphas are narcissistic, all narcissists are alphas. So think about that, because they have to protect the illusion of their power. Maybe they believe it, maybe they don't believe it, but it's how they're projecting themselves to the outward world. If you project that to the outward world long enough, I've got no doubt in my mind that sooner or later you're going to believe your own, I've always said, believe your own PR. You're going to believe your own lies, your own nonsense. So that's what's happening out here.
So, T, a question on that. So how do you parallel that with executive coaching? Because, at one point, executive coaching seemed to be pretty hot and heavy, but
Sure.
if we're not truly getting results, or from what we're saying, it may not be as received by executives. So can you just chat about that?
Yeah, by all means, and everyone, you can throw in your own thoughts around this. I'll just say that I believe that a lot of times executive or C-suite coaching is not something that the C-suite members have asked for or invited into their reality, as much as it's something that they feel like they should be doing because that's the big buzz in the whole world of leadership or whatever, or they'll go through the motions of whatever it is. Maybe it's been imposed upon them by whatever leadership development program they have to subscribe to. Maybe it's being forced upon them by some other, they misbehaved. And so there was a lawsuit. And because of the lawsuit, now all of the C-suite has to go through sensitivity training, or, whatever it is that we're looking at in this term. So I don't know how often true alphas invite into their reality anything that might give evidence that they are lacking in some way, shape, or form. So alphas are the least likely to sit in our training classes. And can we all understand why they don't want to sit in a training class?
Yes.
They already know.
They think they already know. Even if they don't already know, they want to make sure that everyone else thinks that they already know. So there's a tremendous amount of insecurity under the alpha behavior set that's there.
So T, would this be about getting the alpha to connect with other emotions and other experiences to move them?
You would have to find some way, I think, to get them to recognize that you are there to help them become the best version of themselves they can be.
Right.
And so I'm going to go ahead and jump to what the real solution is. And I think a lot of you on the call today are going to resonate very much with this particular descriptor. And by the way, again, for the gals on the line, it may not be as strict. I mean, any guy will tell you that in the world of men, there is a hierarchy. And we may not like it or whatever, but we recognize it. Am I right, guys?
Yes.
You know, there are alphas that are out there. And by the way, right underneath the alpha, although we're not going to talk as much about them today, are the betas. The betas are wannabe alphas. And so they believe that by positioning themselves as the alpha's right-hand guy, they're going to get a lot of benefit from that, and someday maybe they too will become that alpha. But they're okay being the beta, being the second one, because, and this is a joke, so gals, you can put this aside, but alpha behavior in a bar pickup kind of setting, they often want a wingman. The wingman is the beta. And so the beta is the one who thinks that they're doing this because whoever doesn't go with the alpha might go with the beta. Can you guys kind of
Isn't this a downgrade behavior, T?
Absolutely.
wait for, is the beta a downgrade behavior?
Yeah.
No, I think we're still talking about where someone lives on the change grid. I would say that a beta is a little bit further down grid and maybe slightly in grid, because not only do they have to constantly prove to the alpha that they are worth the alpha's attention. They're worth the alpha giving them some time and some energy, although the alpha will often be very condescending and demeaning to the beta, but the beta is comfortable being there. All right. So now we can go through the rest of them as well, and we will sooner or later, but alphas and betas are important things to know. By the way, the alpha finds it very difficult to succeed in the absence of beta support. So, because they need their minions, they need their army, they need their right-hand people. But do they trust those betas? Do they rely on those betas? Do they learn from those betas? Not particularly. And some of these things that's being said on this chart, I would take issue with, but we want to do that. Now, on the gal side of things, I think the same dynamic is there, but there are differences between men and women in communication styles. In fact, while I was on this cruise with Diane, she gave her lectures on how to talk to the Y chromosomes and what the differences are, why the different genders tend to communicate. And she explained the whole thing from a neurochemical perspective. So how estrogen affects thought processes versus how testosterone affects thought processes. And we don't need to go any further than Brian to say that are testosterone and estrogen absolutely equal in their outcomes, or does higher levels of testosterone move you one direction and higher levels of estrogen in other directions?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah, and Diane cited all sorts of research projects that have been done around this whole thing. So as much as we want to talk about equality, equality does not necessarily mean nor require that the genders be identical. So it's just about how you go about getting to where you happen to be. So should they be equal? Yes. Are they equal? We all know the answer there is not supported by the way society behaves, even though from a philosophical perspective, most men understand that women are far more powerful than men are ever going to be. And so we absolutely know the power that women hold over men. And so often the more enlightened men will say that the only reason why men get away with what men get away with is because of women allow it to happen. So they could step up and control us really fast with very few decisions or actions taken. And we don't need to get into that, but I think you guys would, certainly the men on the call would agree that there you go. We know who calls the shots. No one's going to argue with mom. Okay, so now on the female side of things, it says that alpha females are charming and intelligent. They tend to come across as the rock star. They can be opinionated, dominating, and strong-willed. I believe that even if we just look at the social media world and who these influencers happen to be, you start to watch some of the behavior in the world of female influencers, you can go like, oh no, they can be very opinionated and dominating. You put them into a head-to-head battle with an alpha male, and I promise you, you're going to watch someone be able to hold their own weight and build their own case, etc. Now, you gals can answer this far more accurately than we guys can, but do you recognize in your own world that there are women who tend to be and want to be the focus of everyone's attention? They want to be the ones that get heard. They want to be the ones that everyone looks up to, admires, acknowledges, appreciates. Does that exist in the world of a female hierarchy?
Yes, I can think of several, and one in particular, but she really doesn't care if you like her.
Well, but is she going after the attention of others, or is she just this force to be reckoned with?
She's a force to be reckoned with.
See, now that's different because alpha men absolutely want the attention. They want the acknowledgement. They love it when other men acknowledge them, appreciate them, aspire to be them. They kind of get off on that dynamic because it makes them feel like they are in control of a certain population that happens to be there. So, Linda, in the world of women, are there also betas? So I'm thinking about, you see all these movies, questionable though they may be. There's always some gal that's the leader of the pack, and she's surrounded by, wasn't there a movie called Veronica's or something or another? Where all these girls had the exact same name, and one was the boss, and the other ones just kind of wanted to walk in, in line so they could be one of the cool gals, etc. Does that actually exist in the real world of women in hierarchies, or not so much?
I don't know. You're right. There are a lot of movies about that exactly, but
Oh, Linda, you just muted. Oh, your phone's ringing. Okay, so all right, pop back on, dear. Finish your thought.
yeah, that's there's a lot of movies, Mean Girls and
Yeah.
oh gosh, let's say Grease. Remember the one gal that was the alpha gal, and yeah.
Yep. And so all those kind of followers that are there, some of them aspire to be the alpha, but they have a tough job because not only do they have to do what the beta has to do, they also have to keep the alpha happy with them. Because the moment the alpha becomes unhappy with the beta, what happens to the beta? So
They're gone.
They're gone. They get cast aside.
New beta.
The new betas arise. And by the way, the other betas will turn against the beta that is now being brought under scrutiny. And so, because again, they're all fighting for the attention of the alpha so that they can do that. Now, I'm sure these words are also very readily applied in animal behavior. So if we looked at packs of wolves, any kind of animal group that exists in kind of a pack or family kind of a situation, you're going to see these hierarchies present themselves as well.
So, T, I wonder, does this apply to females in hierarchies like in healthcare, where they act a certain way because they think they have to play the game that way?
Oh, yeah.
In order to be equivalent to males. I see this a lot with a lot of female physicians.
Yeah. Well, and now in all fairness to those females, the what do I say? The creation or the installations of hierarchies in business settings, in collegiate settings, in hospital settings, and whatever, that was something that was basically put in place by men long ago. And so if the women had created these things, I don't know that the hierarchy would be as prominent as it is. But I'll give you one example from my own life. Way back when I decided that I was going to get certified as an EMT. Thought it would give me some better part-time job possibilities while I was going through my schooling and all that. So I decided I would take that class. And talk about the hierarchy. So you could see why the doctors think they're better than this, and why surgeons thought they were better than general practitioners and chiefs of staff and all this. The hierarchy is blatant, and the
Hmm.
abuse of anyone lower than them in the hierarchy is very, very obvious. So at some point in my final exams for getting my designation as an EMT, there was a practical. They asked us a whole bunch of questions about things. Well, one of them was, what is this? And they handed us an object, and the object was a nebulizer. So there's humidifiers and nebulizers that get added to any kind of a gas line. So you don't take straight oxygen. Straight oxygen would dry you out so fast that a whole different set of problems would arise. And so the oxygen or whatever other gas they might be giving you passes through something that's going to give you either humidity, or in the case of lots of respiratory things, they need it to be bigger than humidity. They need it to be a cloud. And so you guys know, nebulizing, nebula, all that kind of stuff. It's really referring to a cloud kind of formation. So the doctors who are judging us hand us a nebulizer, and we say it's a nebulizer. And they say, no, it's a humidifier. Meanwhile, etched in raised letters on the plastic of the nebulizer, it says nebulizer. It's like all we have to do is read it and we know that it's a nebulizer, but they marked all of us wrong who put the answer down as nebulizer. And so afterwards, we challenged it. You'll find out why I challenge things in just a second. And they said, because it is more important for you to be compliant than for you to be right.
Oh, wow.
Right. That's a hierarchy. That's when it's all going, you can't tell the emperor they have no clothes. So yeah. So
That's crazy as hell.
it's totally crazy. Totally crazy. Because going like, why is this stupid question even on the exam? It says nebulizer, etched in the plastic. So how could anybody get it wrong? So obviously that was not the real reason for the question. So yeah, anyway, there you go. So I do believe that the hierarchies exist in business settings and in all those different organization sorts of things, structures that you've mentioned, because they were built by men long, long, long ago. And so, yeah, now gals come into that hierarchy. And again, I'm not a gal. I don't know how prevalent hierarchies are in the world of being a woman, but they're now in a male hierarchical structure, so they have to kind of do whatever it is, and then some, in order to be recognized, rewarded, acknowledged, etc.
You know what,
Interesting.
T? I think you said it right. Am I unmuted?
Oh yeah, we can hear you. Go ahead.
Yeah. Okay. You know what, you said something about that males, it's blatant. And I think that's the difference. The women, I think, are much more vicious because you don't know what's coming at you. You don't know where it's coming from.
Mhm.
And it's almost like it's passive aggressiveness on steroids. And when you said the only reason males have the power that women give it to them, with teens, I have seen that, yes. I mean, girls will take their lives just because I have never seen the power of that mean girls syndrome that Linda talked about.
Yep.
Because at some point, guys will just say, screw you, screw
Right.
off. You know what I mean? And girls just keep sucking it in. So I almost see more of it with them, and it's not blatant. So it's harder to grasp.
Right. And so maybe the hierarchy and everything that comes from that hierarchy is experienced more as an internal experience by women, where men will fight. I mean, physically fight.
Yes.
So it gets externalized more
And
so.
see, that's part of that neurochemical mix right there, right?
Right.
Because the testosterone will have you doing things, and
Mhm.
regardless to the physical or mental emotional harm, you're
Right.
just charged by that.
Yep.
Whereas the estrogen to be more internal. And I think this is where some of the myths come from in terms of women feel, men don't, that kind of thing, which is a myth,
Mhm.
as if men have no emotions. But I think that's what started some of that.
Yeah. Yep. Yeah. You know, I think another way that hierarchy expresses itself in the world of women, and again, gals, you have to let me know if what we're saying is accurate or not. I'll just give the example about um, women and things like makeup, getting their nails done, getting their hair done, all that sort of stuff. They present those behaviors as ways to attract a male. But the truth is, it's war paint on how they fight against other females, because most men don't really care all that much about what the hair looks. They might not even notice what the gal's hair looks like. They just notice if overall she's attractive or not attractive. So maybe for men, it's far more binary. It's yes or no. And more often than not, for most guys, the younger the guys, the more this is true. Yes is what the judgment ends up being. Sure, so because guys are very hormonally driven certainly at that age. And so, but like I've always wondered, why do women think that makeup and all the clothes that they put on and the hair and the nails, why do they think they're doing that? Because guys are somehow or another impacted by it.
Gee, I think it's for self-esteem.
All right, self-esteem, but who's throwing their self-esteem into question?
Mm.
Because again, it's not the guys.
Well, guys do things too.
All right, tell us about that. Yeah, all right, go ahead.
Yeah, I mean, my hair is very important to me. I get up every morning, take a shower, and do my hair.
Yeah.
I care about the way I dress. Now, I'm a high I, so my personality drives a bit of that. But I think guys have attention on themselves, maybe not to the degree, but
Right.
still do.
Yeah, because
Mhm.
guys will work out. We want to be well, groomed or whatever. Um, what's the whole shower gel stuff? Axe versus whatever. So guys want to smell okay, all that kind of stuff. But I wonder if it's because, and I do understand the whole thing about hair, because a lot of my friends, as they got older, they were having hair loss issues, and some of them decided to go and have hair transplants and that sort of thing. So certainly there is an element of someone doing it because it helps them feel better about themselves and how they are. But is it in their own assessment of themselves? Or are they doing that because they're trying to keep up with the other guys? Or are they doing it to attract gals? What's the motivation that underlines the other?
See, and I think that's difficult too, because for some, I think it's internal, and for some, I think it's external.
All right.
Mhm.
Yep, yep, yep. Now, what about on the gal side of things? Because certainly whatever the guys do, it's not going to, well, guys don't get marketed to anywhere near as much as gals do about,
Yeah.
things like appearance and makeup and all that sort of stuff. So it might also be the result of what I'm gonna say, marketing becoming no, what the object of the marketing is becoming a societal norm.
Oh, okay,
Mhm.
but there's another dynamic there, T. And so when you're with girls, it is the attraction of the male, but it's more a competitiveness
Mhm.
with other females because we are so socialized to get the male, and we are taught not team dynamics, but a very catty competitiveness where guys can be playing baseball or something, and they learn a team mentality where girls generally are polarized
Mm.
and competitive.
Interesting.
Interesting.
Very
Yeah.
interesting. Well, and the point of me bringing this up is to just say that while the gender should be equal in opportunities and in regard and all that sort of stuff, biochemically we are different. And those biochemical differences do have a very strong impact on attitudes, beliefs, behaviors, etc. And so, I don't know that we're ever going to be identical, and I don't know that being identical would even work, but there you are on that. So that's why I'm going like there may be a hierarchy, but most of the writings you're going to find about hierarchies apply to males, not so much to females in the like if you're watching the videos or whatever. Okay, so any other thoughts, comments about hierarchies in the two genders or alpha, beta? Or can we go like, no, there's enough pattern in that we can see evidence of both hierarchy and these two types, alphas and betas, in both genders?
Now it's pretty controversial, T, but what about the trans movement?
Well, that's the whole different kind of world that goes in, because I've always been someone who tries to allow space for however somebody chooses to define themselves or express themselves. At the same time, I'm 65 years old, and a lot of it I simply don't understand, and a lot of it I simply don't believe. So, but that's me, that's my limitations that are speaking. So I don't know enough about the real, what do I say, the real medical and psychosocial kinds of studies that have been done around transgenderism to know, is it a real thing? If it is a real thing, what percentage of the population that says they are transgender are in fact transgender, as opposed to jumping on the bandwagon for whatever the current cause happens to be? Because right now it almost seems like there are more transgender people than there are gay people. And I suspect that's not really the case. Maybe it's just what's getting the attention and all that. So I don't know. I've never seen any statistics about what percentage of the population is gay, although I think I saw 10% or so at some point. But I don't know what percentage would define themselves as transgender. So
Yeah,
I
I
don't
don't know
know.
either. I don't know the medical aspects of it myself, quite honestly, but I try to uh, understand it, because what comes to mind to me as you're talking about, like even alpha, beta, and all of these here are the context. Because we always talk about the change grid as being situational. And
Mhm.
so a lot of that would play out amongst a lot of different variables. And when you talk about trends and those kinds of things, I think there's a lot of variables there. 'Cause
Yeah,
even these social media sites like LinkedIn now has options for pronouns,
your
and people
pronoun.
always ask my pronoun. I say, I don't know what you're talking about. I go by my name.
Right.
I don't what do I need a pronoun for? I don't know. I
Yeah.
just
Yeah. But
just give
we all know it's becoming more and more of an issue, and it's basically gaining traction if it's resulting in people, asking what someone's pronouns are, etc. I just remember about a couple years ago that someone was saying that there's cisgendered, and then there's this kind of gender and that kind of gender, and I went like, I am so confused. I need a diagram. I really need a diagram to figure out what's going on, because I don't want to be disrespectful to anyone ever, but if they're going to be able to go ballistic on you because you misgender them, okay, then it's got to be easier to gender someone than having to ask somebody every time you meet somebody, and then being held accountable for remembering how they gender themselves, um, in the absence of any physical cues for us to kind of be reminded. With me on this? I know I'm not.
No, you're right. I got in trouble for I always, I grew up with that, no ma'am and no sir and yes ma'am, that kind of thing. And I said that to a female, and it got back that I don't know if they said misgendered her, but she doesn't prefer to be called that. And I'm like, I don't know what she prefers to be called then.
Right, how am I supposed to guess? So
So
Well, why wouldn't she have told you right then and there in a very polite way
well,
instead of just letting it get back to you?
I'll tell you.
exactly,
I
exactly.
can tell you that the answer to that is that, um, sometimes when there is a movement afoot, you almost want to have people misgender you, or whatever the case might have been, so that you can become very belligerent, very outspoken,
Self-righteous.
self-righteous,
Mhm.
on and on and on, where someone just made, I mean, when you say yes, ma'am, or whatever, you're just being polite. And now it's like, it's too dangerous for us to be polite,
Hmm.
because we might end up misgendering somebody.
And they get to hold on to their anger, and
Yeah,
they have an excuse to be angry at the world and you.
absolutely.
Yeah.
Meanwhile, they're very far upgrid. Some of them are very far
Yep.
outgrid, and we know what happens in both those danger zones.
Yeah, yeah.
So do I believe that transgender people exist? Of course, because there was a book, by the way, this is probably a decade ago or longer. You guys can certainly find it, but it was called Brain Sex. And brain sex was really all about this, I don't know, study or whatever. I don't remember all the details, but they said that physical gender may be very straightforward. There are some individuals who are born with genitalia that might be inclusive of both of the normal, of the regular, of the whatever, average, whatever. But by and large, you can look at physical gender and it's very straightforward. But they said brain gender or brain sex is a very different thing, that everyone's brains will fall somewhere along a very wide continuum between a purely male brain and a purely female brain. And they talk about the different things. Like one of the tests they talked about was spatial recognition. So if you're standing in front of a big open field, one gender does a better job of figuring out what the area is inside of that field. Which gender do you think that tend to be attributed to?
Male.
Male.
Another thing is that when it came to spatial recognition, is when giving directions, one of the genders, and again, we're talking about brain sex, they're talking about a very full continuum, have a tendency to give someone directions based on landmarks versus on cardinal directions.
That sounds like female.
So yeah, gals are more likely, or the female brain, whatever they were deciding, would say more likely to use reference points. So relative directions as opposed to literal directions. So yeah, we don't say go 2 blocks and turn north.
Yeah. I
So
would love
when
to see that book.
When you're saying, I remember that book, it was absolutely fascinating. And when you're saying continuum, I've been thinking that quite a bit while we've been talking, that it's just like the change grid. There's a continuum of all different kinds of people, all different kinds of personalities. And so your brain can have, there can be women with lots of testosterone and men with lots of estrogen. And there's this whole continuum of how people's brains are actually working to make them who they are.
Right, right. And that gives support to the whole transgender kind of thing, because you don't see a full continuum when it comes to physical genitalia. I mean, I'm sure there's some in-betweens. I don't know. I don't want to see pictures. Don't send me anything. But nevertheless, I think that there is that tends to be a lot more one or the other, where your brain chemistry, etc. I think there are tremendous variables that can happen in that regard. Yeah.
Absolutely. I would agree with Linda. In fact, that's in neuroscience. They said what makes our brains unique is how we utilize them. And so that would really make sense to me.
Right.
But that's what's scary about the transgender thing. I think it's one thing to be accepting and inclusive, but another to be promoting. And I think at an early age, we are actually brain training people to almost feel abnormal if they're not transgender. There is.
And that's where I was talking about this whole peer pressure. If you want to be a cool kid today, is there pressure for you to be different in order to be cool? Or can't you just be cool in your own skin with your own boy or girl parts? I mean, I don't know. So yeah. We're all going to have our personal opinions about when it should be celebrated or whatever. But yeah, I don't know. But yeah, anyway, I believe David, that's a very long answer to a very short question. So yeah, I believe that there is lots of basis for transgenders existing, but I don't know if the prevalence of it and the attention that it's getting is in line with that, or inflated or whatever. Okay. Yeah. Shag said, why should it even matter? I kind of agree. The only thing that I think it starts mattering is if we now have to have 3 or 4 different bathrooms. Because I think ultimately, in fact, I saw this in the UK, it's a bathroom. and all
Mhm.
genders use the exact same bathroom. And so there, mind you, their toilets are enclosed by floor to ceiling doors that shut up, that you can have total privacy in there. But once you go to wash your hands, you're just going and washing your hands.
Mhm.
So yeah, so I think that's what's happening. And maybe that's a good thing. Maybe having that neutrality is a good thing.
You know, Brian, are there things being done now medically? Because I have counseled people like decades ago that were transgender, and it's obvious. The big hands, the big feet, the deep voice. I mean, your brain just freezes. But right ahead of me on the TEDx stage a couple weeks ago was a transgender. And I think she had everybody fooled. She was, her body, everything about her was as feminine as I've ever seen. Are there things they're doing today that they weren't doing a few decades ago? Because it shocked all of us.
Yeah, they're looking at that, and that's something we study in medical genetics and genomics. So when we start talking about omics, you're talking about, the metabolites in people's blood and how you can see things way ahead of time. So that's what they're looking at now, because, okay, if it is in fact a real medical condition, you will want to be able to spot that sooner than later when you're just trying to figure it out. And that's what they're studying now to see if there is some validity to that. It's just not
Yeah.
being studied at scale.
Yep, yep,
And
yep.
and if they have it sooner, does that make a difference? You know, she was quite young. If it's at an early age, is it easier to?
Not easier, but at least you can identify through genetics what you're more susceptible to. And in terms of development later on, kind of like myself being a preemie baby, you can look at preemie babies, say, okay, yeah, developmentally they may have these kinds of issues. Like I developed a heart condition at 17 that typically would have been identified at birth. And so I had heart surgery at 17. Yeah, pericardial cyst almost like literally choked out my entire heart. So those kinds of things, again, from genetic studies can be synthesized and start to understand some of these, if you have extra chromosomes here or there, and you're more susceptible to. And then you can start talking about the psychology of making choices and decisions, and how would you grow this person into being the best human being that they possibly can be.
Yep.
You know, I have one more question as long as we're on the topic. She happened to be Asian.
Mhm.
Is there a difference if you're Asian, Caucasian, Black with being transgender? Does the operation, is it more successful? Is there a difference with race?
Sometimes it kind of the cultural aspect certainly plays a role in it. It's not a major role per se, but it's definitely a role in terms of acceptance and in their decision making. Would they actually do the surgery? They find like the cultural acceptance is kind of harder. Like to be Black and gay is just not something that people tend to
Yeah,
adhere.
culturally is the
Yeah.
I just saw Billy Porter live last Thursday, and he put
Mm.
on an amazing
Oh
performance.
yeah. Yeah.
Oh
Mhm.
my God. And he
Yep.
was just so honest and open and gracious and loving.
Yeah.
Yeah.
How can you not like people like that?
Well, right.
Right.
That's the whole thing. It's not, I think that just based on um, people who are attracted to the human development industry, we make room for differences. We make room for that. We celebrate uniqueness in that. So that's not
It fills the room
yeah, exactly.
with a lot of things.
Right. No,
People love ideas.
absolutely. Absolutely. But yeah, if I'm going to get in trouble for misgendering someone who I've never even known or met or whatever, and they're going to go ballistic on me, okay, I'm not okay with that. So, because otherwise my only option is to never speak to anyone again. And that's not realistic. All right, I do want to throw one more thing out before our time is up for today. If you are going to go and look at any of these things, videos for gammas and alphas, betas, omegas, all that kind of stuff. There's a lot of interesting things to learn about them, and you will see that they tend to take certain homes on the change grid. But there is one that's very, very different, and that is the sigma. Now, they usually they do not put the sigma in the hierarchy. They put the sigma outside of the hierarchy. So a sigma is someone who does not really follow the rules of the hierarchy. They basically see things in a very different kind of way. They tend to be described as a lone wolf. They tend to be very independent. They don't get sucked into anybody else's, nonsense. They have a tendency to be very quiet, collect all the information about what's going on in a given situation, and they are the ones who end up being two things when it comes to alphas. They are greatly feared by alphas because sigmas see through the alpha's nonsense. They see the true person rather than the person that the alpha is trying to project. Because of that, alphas are very threatened by sigmas and have a tendency to avoid them. But if the alpha will embrace the sigma is the one who the alpha has the best chance of learning from, growing from, etc. Now, sigmas are the rarest of the types, and if you look into the background for sigmas, you'll see what it's really going on. But as I was reading the descriptions and all that, I kind of went like, that's me. And I went like, I don't think it's just me. I think it's people that are in the human development industry. So I think that in order for us to tackle these people that are out there in alpha land, very far out grid, there's only two ways I know of to work with these people. And that's for you to meet them and conquer them, or meet them and earn their respect. But you can't have two kings of the hill. Or you have to be the one who says, I see the real you. I recognize the real you. And I can help the real you, but I'm not going to look up to you. And this has always been my issue with working with particularly male business owners, male C-suite people. It's kind of like they want to immediately subordinate another male. And I've never put up with that. I've always just said, no, I don't, I'm not impressed by you. I'm not threatened by you. I'm really just kind of neutral about you. And so if I'm going to work with you, you're going to have to recognize that this is who I am and this is how I am. And if you want my help, I'm happy to provide it. But no, I'm not going to come in here and be yet another yes person and whatever the case may be. So I'm willing to tell them the things that they didn't want to hear from anybody. And so I think that particularly when it comes to the consulting side of the human development industry, you got to be willing to go toe to toe with alphas, and you have to be willing to either walk away from them if you believe they're not a workable situation. But once you get embraced by an alpha, you've got a really strong client for a long time to come. Thoughts about that, anybody?
We should talk about toxic masculinity.
Yep. I was just thinking the same thing, David.
That's the alpha at an extreme. That's the alpha.
And I can see why, in that regard, an alpha would not like a sigma, because they don't want to deal with the truth, right? And if you don't deal with the truth, then there's nothing to change.
Right. And one of the characteristics of a sigma is they don't hesitate to just tell you what it is they see and what it is that they think. Now, they're not fighting with anybody, because a sigma characteristic is that they genuinely don't care whether you agree with them or disagree with them. They're solitary in their way of living. They respond to their own kind of thoughts, and you can either handle them or you can't handle them. But they tend to be very, very successful. But look, super ambitious and wants to be their own boss. They do say that the reason why they're frightened by us is because sigmas do have the ability to see what your shortcomings are. And their fear is that you will use the alpha shortcomings against them. And that's
some police.
Yeah, go ahead, Edie.
No, finish your thought now. Yeah.
Oh, no, I did. That was the end of my thought. Yep.
But I'm just thinking there are police departments, and it was on 60 Minutes or something, that have capitalized on the alpha, getting in alignment. The police department got the alpha male in the gang to align with them, and it's been one of the most successful endeavors to, get a
Yep.
hold of and handle gangs.
Well, right, because what they're doing then is they're saying, I'm going to talk to you as an alpha, and I'm an alpha as well. Two
Mhm.
alphas are able to negotiate some sort of a detente, if you will, some sort of a way that the two alphas can continue to rule their domains and not cause conflict between the two alphas. So even if you look historically about how different kingdoms, adjacent kingdoms, or even now countries tend to be run by alphas. And so you can reach an agreement with those alphas, but I promise you, if that gang leader alpha ever goes up against that police officer thing and challenges them, they're not going to be peers anymore. There's going to be a battle.
So
And
that's like the rapport in NLP. Is that what that is like?
that's certainly part of it. It's about a mutual respect, acknowledging that there. In fact, if you've watched these movies about mob behavior and all that,
Mhm.
you can often see that leaders of different mobs will come together and they're very respectful of one another. Um, they try to find some ways to work together on certain things, but that's it. And if a mob leader finds out that one of their own has done something to offend the other mob leader, what will the mob leader do to that person who insulted the other mob?
Extricate them.
Extricate them one way or another. So
Mm.
yeah, because you have to be able to show, no, I will not tolerate people being disrespectful of the other.
So T, I'd be interested in hearing your strategy uh, for dealing with that in terms of being the Sigma. I get in a heap of trouble for telling these healthcare organizations, like, when the buzzwords drive me nuts, right? The patient-centered, evidence-based, and I'm like, how much evidence do you need to see to understand what you're doing isn't working?
Right, right.
I get in so much trouble for that. So it's probably not the best way to come across, but I'm challenging these alphas, those directing these things, to change the way they're seeing it. I'm not saying you have to do what I say. I'm just like, if it's truly evidence-based or patient-centered, have you consulted the patient?
Right, right, right. And often that is not the case. And
No.
going back to working with business owners or in the C-suite, look, we all know that not every company, well, this we know, any company that's in trouble got itself in trouble without our involvement. So we're coming in there now saying, like, whatever this mess is that you're in, we can help you with. But you have to be willing to be helped. You have to be willing to take your responsibility for whatever it is that you're doing. Otherwise, you're going to continue uh, behave in the same way, the same problems.
Right,
You know?
right.
So, but anyway, I just thought that was interesting. I'd just be curious, you guys, as you learn more about these, to see where are you? Because being a consultant, an alpha consultant would come across very different. By the way, how successful do you think a beta consultant would be?
Mm.
I think successful.
Tell me why.
Well, because they find a way to support the alpha, gain the alpha's trust, and then they're able to influence the alpha.
Mm-hmm. And as long as the alpha continues to find value in that beta's support, that is to say, the beta doesn't cross a particular line, all is good. But how likely is the beta to cross the line? And then
Sooner or later.
sooner or later. And so if if you're going to be a really good consultant, a good successful consultant, you have to be willing to say, you're not hiring me to tell you what you're doing right. You're hiring me to tell you what you're doing wrong and fix it. So, because if everything you're doing is right, you don't need me and I don't need to be here. So, inherent in the work that we do in consulting and perhaps even in a lot of other things like training, for that example, we're trying to identify gaps and close them. We're not trying to tell you, oh, what you're all doing and what you're all learning is just perfect, and ignore the fact that there's another set of stuff that they're doing poorly or ignoring altogether. That's not a good training program. That's not going to produce any valuable difference. And so as I look at these, I go, who is going to be most effective at getting those alpha business leaders, decision makers, C-suite kind of people? Who's going to be most effective at helping that alpha to do whatever it is that needs to be done? Maybe it's another alpha, but more often than not, it's going to be a sigma. And I can't tell you how often I've said to a client who's starting to push back on what I'm saying a little bit, I say to them, you can fire me, but you can't fire the truth. Sooner or later, this situation is going to rise again, because it's not going to go away until you do what is necessary to get it to go away.
That's really good.
Right.
That's really
So
good.
it all goes about killing the messenger, killing the whatever. It's like, look, I'm here to help you, but never forget, I was looking for a client when I found you. The worst you can do to me is inconvenience me. But what do you do to yourself in the act of inconveniencing me?
Mm.
And
Wow.
that's where they have to go. So are they ready to be worked with? We all know this. There's a great deal of companies out there that are screwed up, and their future does not bode well. And there's nothing we can do about it. Maybe there's a lot of businesses out there that should go out of business.
Mhm.
And we're okay with that, because I think that's the thing about a sigma versus perhaps a gamma.
Gamma, yes.
We don't, we don't try to go in there and save the world. We just go in there and observe what's happening with the world and see what we can do to be of service around them. I would be very concerned if I hired a consultant who was always a gamma. Am I going to get
Mhm.
anything from a gamma? Introverted, super sensitive, the yes man at the office, has big plans but lacks
Not
determination.
much.
Mm-mm.
No, I can't do that. I can't do that. Yeah, we could look at the others as well, but you get the idea. But
Yeah.
yeah, you take an alpha and you put them in contact with a sigma, and you can see what's going on. And, I mean, for all of you, how often have people said to you, you're so good at what you do, you're so smart, how do you know all this? You hear those things as successful human development professionals. They always want to bestow their great results on you. And we
Mhm.
then have to turn around and go like, no, 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 you did the work. We told
Mhm.
you what you should be looking at or changing or whatever, and how to do that, but ultimately you did the work. We don't want the credit for what's
Right.
going on. The credit belongs to them for
Right.
whatever it happens to be. Likewise, if they don't take our advice and they end up suffering because of it, we don't own that either.
Mhm.
So we told them whatever it is that needed to be done. And so, yeah, so we'll talk more about this, because I think there's a lot in here. And again, you will find this as being labeled as pop psychology, although it's been around for a very long time. But people will kind of set it aside as not being very well documented, researched, whatever. To me, that doesn't render it less true or less useful. So we're willing to look at any model of human behavior that seems to have enough, I want to say, consistency within it or accuracy within it. We can say, no, that feels right. That makes sense. And when we can say, yeah, we know alphas exist and betas exist, well, that's enough for us to say, let's take a deeper look at this and
Right.
see how it fits on the change grid and what that adds to our body of knowledge and understanding.
Right. Where
Yeah.
did you see this, T? Like what site
I
is
was
this
just
at?
I was just doing my regular YouTube stuff, and up came this stuff. Oh, I know what it was. I took one of those free online personality tests,
Ah,
and
okay.
they didn't label it as this particular one, but suddenly I was getting video after video for sigmas, sigma, sigma, sigma. And so I ultimately took the test for determining which of these types you happen to be, and I tested out 98% sigma. So, yeah, so there it is. So they all exist. They're all out there.
Are you a manipulative mastermind, T?
I am very much a manipulative mastermind, but I don't care enough to bother implementing my masterminded plan. So, but oh yeah, you could imagine I've figured out the demise of many a situation, but they're still out there because bottom line, one of the characters of a Sigma is that we genuinely don't care. So
Mm.
we care about us, and everyone else is entitled to their own reality and their own outcomes and whatever it happens to be. So we allow people to be who they are, how they are, because bottom line, we don't really care. We
So you
finally
will not see Sigmas upgrade likely. They're not
well,
likely to be up there with that
there
kind
is
of
an there is
attitude.
an element where, and this is certainly true for me as well. We can be where Sigmas tend to be very, very good listeners, and we have very high levels of tolerance about things. But once you go beyond that boundary of our tolerance, we instantly skyrocket into something explosive.
Oh, that sounds like me.
Yeah, I mean, there's been plenty of times where I finally reached a breaking point with a client and I told them off up one side and down the other.
Hmm.
And they're looking at me like, where did that come from? Where did that come from? It's kind of like it's always been part of there. I'm just pretty good at controlling it. So, you know, yeah. Anyway,
Yeah, I had to take that assessment. That
yeah,
sounds
take the
like me.
assessment. It is interesting, and it's you know, it's free. You might as well figure out what it's all about. And it tells you what the percentages are for these different types to be prevalent. So, yeah, yeah. Anyway,
Okay.
there you go. I'd be curious to know how you guys all test out and if you think that how you tested is accurate. And also, I think it's important to know what kind of clients are we looking for to do the kind of work that we're doing. Most of these are very coachable. Betas, gammas, omegas, deltas, these are very coachable. So are we seeking them out?
Mm.
Um, because our
What is the website for it, team, to go to
Oh, I
get the
don't know. I just did a quick little because it was coming up in my YouTube feed. I just clicked on it. And so I don't even remember where it took me. But if you type in something about male hierarchy personality tests, and you can try
Okay.
female, but you're just not going to find all that much on the study of this in females. Maybe if you go to the pleasant personality, that's what this website is, or what copyrighted from this. Maybe they've got a test because they got to be making money somehow.
Mm.
Interesting. You know, and I know we're out of time today, but at some point, did you ever discuss, and you guys do a lot more of the corporate consulting, I do more speaking. When a CEO, you know, refuses to be part of the training that you feel they really have to be there, what do you do? Do you just say, I don't work with you unless you participate?
Um, I would say to you that if I was hired to do a training program specifically for leaders, then that's the answer. You're not going to be there. Why am I here? But
Yeah.
if it's for general management, like really developing some leadership skills earlier on in their career path, and we'd like the executives to be there, but they don't show up, the show goes on if the executives are or aren't there. But almost always, and you guys have been here before, almost always at some point during that training, the people in your class are going to say, why aren't the executives here? They're the ones who really need to hear this.
Exactly.
So it's pretty common, pretty common. Let me just click. I just typed in the search engine. So let me just return and I'll see what it comes up with. Yeah. So the very first one, I just typed in male hierarchy personality test. And apparently there is one called the IDR Labs test. And then psychometrics, free quizzes, 100% honest answers, 7 Sigma male tests to test. Because here's the thing, everybody now wants to be a Sigma. And they're just saying like it doesn't change that way. This is about brain chemistry. This is not something that I mean, sure you can cultivate any attribute of any of the things. If I need to be an alpha, I'm sure I could come across as an alpha. But you know, anyway, so there's plenty there to do, but I don't if I type in female hierarchy, let's see what comes up. Well, there you go. It's a different websites, but there seems to be some personality type things there too. So give it a whirl. Give it a whirl. See how you test out.
Excellent. Thank you for this.
Yeah, look, IDR that was first in there. Apparently they have a women in leadership test, but not you know, they were first in the lineup for the male hierarchical test. So who knows? Play around with them. You know, if it's free, how can we resist a free personality test?
Exactly.
Yeah. Okay. Anyway, there you go. So thanks, everybody. We will talk again next week. So bye for now.
Have a great day, everybody.
Yeah, I hope you feel better.
I'll be.
Bye.
Bye bye.
Bye now.